Oh my God, guys. I just thought I'm down in my basement. I was like, there's a man in my house right now, and I don't know who it is. My son's voice is dropping.
It's just like...
Oh my God. I was like, who is this man? This is a 13-year-old Nix with a mustache. Oh, welcome into Scoop City on a Monday. I'm James Palmer. We have everything to cover today. What happened in the divisional round, what to look forward to in the championship round, and another head coach opening. Whew. We're going to cover top to bottom with the Athletics senior NFL insider Dianna Russini, the Sean McDermott firing, the end of an era in Buffalo. Never quite got to the mountaintop, but spent a lot of time hanging out at high altitude. Also, what's next for Jarrett Stidham and Bo Nix and Sean Payton as they have a backup quarterback playing in the AFC Championship game. And then the Bears, come back, but comes up short against the guy who knows about game-winning drives better than anybody else in football. Dianna, how are you? You were at that game in New England. Have you thawed out? Are we back to the world of the living? What was the conditions like, really?
Okay, so on TV, what did it look like to you? Like just wet?
It
like
looked
rainy?
Gross, honestly. And I also didn't know why D'Amico Ryans wasn't wearing a hat of any sort. His just bald head was just accumulating moisture like nonstop. And by the end of the game, Vrabel just looked like just soaked. There were stretches on the screen where it was like, this was tough to throw a football.
So there were moments where it definitely looked sloppy. And then there was moments where it was beautiful because the wintry mix would lean towards the snow. And so I was standing in the tunnel where the Patriots run back into their locker room area, probably with like 6 minutes left on the clock. I stood there to just kind of take it all in. And I will say it felt like a movie. It was picturesque. They had, the music blasting. The fans were going crazy. They were chanting MVP. Snow coming down in Foxborough in January. They're headed to the AFC Championship game. And I hadn't been back to Foxborough in January, I guess, since Tom Brady, right? That would make sense.
Neither have the Patriots, actually.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah. Me and everyone else in that stadium was experiencing January football for the first time in a long time. And I will say there's so much familiarity there. Like it just feels right because we're so accustomed to it. But yet there's something very different about this Patriots team. And when I say that, I don't mean just because it's like the interacting with the players and the coaching staff. It's just everything about the New England organization now, top to bottom, from talking to people in the tunnels, people that work at Gillette. Like everything just has a little bit more joy to it than what I'm used to. And I think some of that is reflective of the youth on the team, right? There's just kind of like a young, naive feel to this team. They're like, holy crap, we're good. And I think they know it. And everyone's just like leaning into this. Like we weren't supposed to be this good so quickly. And then of course you've got the variable element to all of us who's just literally has his finger right on the pulse of this team so perfectly, which I think is so fitting because when I think about a head coach having the best grip on their team, I don't think anyone does it better than Sean Payton. So the fact that these two are going head to head, I'm so pumped to see the different acts of warfare that go down this week on how they're going to try to get into each other's heads and what type of motivational tactics they're each going to use to get their guys ready. So it was pretty electric. I will say I'm so glad I was able to get there. But we talk about the division, we talk about championship weekend for 2 seconds. Because it's all about the coaching cycle now. Again.
That's all it is. You're right. And later in the show, we'll get a little bit into that breakdown. It's one of the two Mike versus Sean matchups we have in the championship round. We also have the Ellis brothers going against each other between the Patriots and the Broncos. And if you talk to anybody in New England, Dinah, right, they'll tell you, this is the closest team I've ever been on. And it's that youthful group that's there. They're like, we're so close. I have veterans in Denver here telling me this is the closest team I've ever been on. Mike McGlinchey's like, I've never been on a team this close. There's a lot of cool aspects between these two teams that are going to face off in this AFC AFC Championship game. But you're right, it's the coaches. And it's Sean McDermott. And he is now out after going 98-50 with the Buffalo Bills. That's a .662 winning percentage. 5 AFC East titles, 2 AFC title game appearances, and really transformed this team and the culture around it in Buffalo. You've seen a lot of the players with what they've put out about their respect for Sean McDermott. We'll get into his future, but why? Why was a change made in Buffalo, Dianna?
So the organization really felt that this was necessary and that there were opportunities to win on Saturday. And I do think they started to lose confidence in McDermott's leadership to get this team to that next level. I don't think that they have hesitation that he's a good coach. And I think it's a question of, has he reached his ceiling here in Buffalo? And can we do better? And they obviously feel that they can do better. As you just said, they haven't made the divisional round 6 straight seasons, which is the longest active streak in football. And I think when you're seeing Josh Allen and you're seeing that he's playing in his prime years right now, you got to make a move if you don't think the result is good enough for your team. And they clearly felt that way. And I was getting some word about it before Saturday's game, actually, that frustrations have grown in that building. And it's I don't want to say I wasn't surprised. It still always gets you a little bit when someone this accomplished and really this respected around football does get fired. But I definitely knew that there was something wasn't right over the last few days. And, they made this decision and they're scrambling now because they're obviously behind, look at all the coaching interviews that have been going on over the last few weeks. And now here Buffalo's throwing their hat in the ring. And you got to just wonder, is Kevin Stefanski and John Harbaugh sitting there like, what the hell?
Because this is a generational talent in Josh Allen, and this is the type of player that you die to just want to coach and want to be in a building with, because they will give you a shot each and every year. And I think, Dianna, you're right. Like with his prime, I was curious about the number 30. He turns 30 this offseason. Like once you start seeing that on paper, like Josh Allen is turning 30, man, have we kind of missed a big portion of this window and taking the most advantage of it that we can. And I love that that's what you bring, that you were hearing it before. I was really hearing it more after, like being around them afterwards. And I was around them plenty early before the game on the sideline. It's, man, if there's any time, it's now. Like we have to, like this is the time that we have to make something work in the postseason. And there was an urgency, I would say, on the sideline before the game. And then after the game, with the way Sean was contacting people from the plane and the way Josh was so emotional, like it just felt different. And I've been there for every single one except one of their playoff finishes in the way that this has ended. And this one did feel different. And I asked around going like, what do you think? Think Sean's safe? I didn't get a definitive answer from anybody. So that made me start going like, well, nobody has said like, yeah, he's good. Everybody's just like,
no, and I know, obviously you were at the game. Mike Silver was at the game and wrote an incredible piece about how change was needed, with knowledge that this was coming. Because I do think that, this is an ownership group that also runs, a hockey team, and they fire people all the time. I was kind of like, I've always thought like, wow, they're really patient with their football team considering, because Sean is that good and he is so respected. And the reaction around the league has been shock from people in football because of what he's done. And so now you look, the 2 last league MVPs, right? And Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen are now both looking for new head coaches.
Unbelievable.
And that's where we're at. And so let's start with the Bills side to this.
Yeah, tell us.
So they are putting their list together right now of what they're looking for. I think Joe Brady would make sense, obviously, as an internal candidate. He's gotten head coach opportunity around the league right now, and he's had it in years prior. The immediate name that I heard from people around football, not in Buffalo, but around football, was Brian Daboll. Actually, no, I did hear from one person in Buffalo that's on the staff currently. Okay. Was like, Brian Daboll just makes all the sense. Josh loves him. And you got to figure, James, if you're Brandon Beane right now, who's going to oversee this coaching search.
And got a promotion.
You don't have time to train a new head coach. I just don't. I don't think they do. Maybe they
like
go
it makes
in that
you get the sense of familiarity, right? Because we're behind it. Who do I really, really know?
Yeah. And who's Josh Allen going to be comfortable with, right? This is his team. At the end of the day, this is Josh Allen. And I think to find the right person who knows how to do this quick, I think is going to be part of their thinking process. But let's take a look at like who's left out there. You know, who most of these guys that we'll call out there are in the process of wrapping up interviews to perhaps be the finalists in some of the jobs they're up for, right? Robert Saleh, Matt Nagy, Mike McCarthy, Brian Flores, Arthur Smith. You know, these are names that you know, they've been busy the last few weeks.
Oh, yeah.
So now Buffalo's got to hop in this thing and see if one of them, you know, are interested. And I'm going to guess that this Bills opening is going to slow something down. I'm not sure which team. I still think Miami's leaning strongly towards Jeff Hafley, who's meeting with them on Monday afternoon, evening. I still think that that's going to be a match because of that relationship between the general manager and Hafley. Obviously, they knew each other in Green Bay. But you have the Vegas Raiders who could really use someone in there who knows what they're doing immediately, right? Like Sean McDermott, to me, would make all the sense in the world.
Okay.
You know, in terms of like kind of transferring over to now the world of Sean McDermott. I think the Cleveland Browns, the Tennessee Titans, who are deep in their searches, are going to have conversations, and they already have today, about bringing him in. Maybe they go to him. But I think this is going to have an effect on this cycle. I think those that were up for these jobs, I don't think they feel so good about them anymore.
Yeah, I mean, with a guy with a .662 winning percentage, you don't go, well, let's just not ignore it. We're too far down the pipeline with these other guys, right? He's too good of a coach to not go, oh, let's pause here. Let's take a minute. And it's funny you've brought up the Falcons and the Giants, because I do think from an organizational side, they're like, well, we're glad we acted quickly. And we, as opposed to maybe the coaches might think a little bit differently. I'll throw a familiar name in there as well, because, man, were there a lot of conversations with him on that Bills sideline before the game. And Davis Webb, the good buddy of Josh Allen that was in that room together, knows a lot of people in that building. A lot of talk. You and I were sending some texts back and forth about Davis and still being an intriguing candidate. Things are on pause with them being in the AFC Championship game. But would they go, like, I get what you're saying, because it's also like we need familiarity, but we also need this to happen now. And that's a 30-year-old guy. So I don't.
And they're ready. And you know, these young coaches they're going to want to get moving here and get in the building and start and learn and go. Yeah. This has to be the most relentless, aggressive firing cycle that we've ever covered together, right? Like I have never seen this before.
Have you gotten a sense why?
No, I
haven't
think
either.
I'm sorry, I don't have a better educated answer, just because I can't find anyone in football who's, and by the way, I'm talking to owners in this process too. It's not like I'm leaving out the decision makers when I'm trying to collect this stuff. And it's not like I'm getting the sense that everybody just thinks the coaches that are out there are that tremendous. That's not it. It's not like there's this golden group. I think a lot of this is timing of when this stuff is happening in terms of the impatience running out, right? I think for McDermott, Josh Allen not having to face Patrick Mahomes and Lamar Jackson and Joe Burrow hurt his chances of returning. Right? Because this was their clearest path. We got rid of the enemy and we still couldn't win. How are we going to do this and play at a high level when the stars are back? So I think that obviously hurt him. I think the successes of a Ben Johnson and a Mike Vrabel hurt.
I know that's
superficial, but I think you see that and you're like, I want that. That's what I want. You know, I want to feel alive in my building that these guys are fighting every day to win.
It's a copycat league, right? And I would go a step further than both of those guys. Let's look at the playoff teams. Liam Cohen in his first year. Jacksonville, one of the hottest teams in football. D'Amico Ryan's just a handful of years down there in Houston. It seems like they got a lot of juice with where they're at. You mentioned Ben Johnson. You mentioned Mike Vrabel. Then you look at Mike McDonald and what he's doing, and they might have the best team in football. And Sean Payton's only in year 3 in Denver. It's like all these teams went through a change one way or another recently, and they're all in the postseason. And there is also this vibe, and tell everybody that's watching and listening, there is this little bit of turn that I've heard in some buildings with the thinking of some owners, which is I have a lot of stress in a lot of the other businesses that I run. maybe I should make my football building a little more enjoyable to be around. And these guys are a lot of energy. Liam Cohen, Ben Johnson, Mike McDonald. There's a lot of positive juice in that building that some of these owners are going, well, like, maybe we should bring these type of guys in to run my football business. Have you ever heard that around the league?
I mean, for sure. And look at the new wave of guys that are in the buildings. You're getting that. And then you also have, of course, this trend of the former player being part of it. You see D'Amico and Vrabel last night, right, as the perfect poster coaches for they've got it, right? Like that's the perfect formula from a former player that can be a player coach, but yet they can hold these guys so accountable. Because the accountability factor is always part of these interview processes that, and I only know this because I went through it with a head coach recently, or at least a candidate, and we went through some of the questions he was getting, and it was, they're asking those, they're giving scenarios like, okay, let's just, for this conversation, this isn't true, but like if Myles Garrett is late for practice twice, this week, what are you doing? How are you handling? How are you managing that? Because this isn't just a regular guy. This is the best player in football. Yeah. How are you going to do that? So I do think that's a big factor, and that's a big question to ask these young guys because it's hard. I remember when Sean McVay got that job, 10 years ago now? One of the biggest concerns was who's going to listen to him? How are players going to listen to this young kid? And if you have that characteristic that demands a room and demands respect, you can do it. But it's special, which is why the Sean McVay example bothers me. Sean is one in a bazillion.
Exactly. And everybody else is searching for it.
And everyone's just looking for it. And I don't know what everybody thinks that just happens all the time. And so obviously we see him having maybe not his best coaching job in Chicago, but I was actually thinking about that. I was reading some of McVay's quotes about just like owning that, he made some bad play calls. And that to me, just, first of all, that's such maturity. That's such belief in what you're doing. That's such confidence to be able to say, like, I called the wrong play. When do you hear coaches ever say that?
His self-evaluation is outstanding.
And it's interesting in this Giants search, when I was talking to people close to John Harbaugh, that was a revelation he had in the learning process now of what he thought he didn't do enough of. And that was stepping up to the podium and say, I didn't make the right call there, or I should have called a timeout here. Because I do think it takes a strong belief in who you are and what you do to do that. And that's hard. I think everyone just naturally sits in a space of insecurity because this is a hard job and it's so competitive and nobody wants to show weakness.
Yes.
But obviously Sean McVay is special in that way, which is why he's once again back in the NFC Championship game when almost a year ago, a little less than a year or a little more than a year ago, we're sitting at the combine wondering if Matthew Stafford's going back to the Rams. And here we are and they're back playing.
Unbelievable. Okay, before you go, I know your time is precious during this. Kevin Stefanski, thoughts on the hire there in Atlanta? I know you've been all over this. Thoughts on the rug and the wallpaper in Arthur Blank's home?
Love it. Fits him. Wouldn't expect anything else.
No.
I would have leaned into all of that. If I was Kevin, I would have wore a robe to the interview.
Well, Matt Ryan almost does have like slippers on. Like he has like the fancy shoes that are kind of slippery. Matt knew it. Matt's been to Arthur's house several times. So
They've
he was
like,
I know the vibe.
Pumped though that they snagged Stefanski here, knowing with all of these openings. I know we kind of joked about the Josh Allen thing, but we're not joking because we think it's funny. We're joking because Kevin Stefanski would have wanted to coach Josh Allen. I don't care what he would
Anybody
ever
who
say.
works with quarterbacks and on offensive side of the ball would love to work with Josh.
Quarterback, really, So, I mean, just imagining what he could do with him. So, look, I think for Atlanta, though, this is such a home run hit for them because he's a grown-up. He knows what he's doing. He's so level-headed. And he's going to be able to bring some of the things that I think he even learned in Cleveland, which was a lot. I recently was talking to somebody close to him about this. I told him that I told this person that I had a friend in the film industry who knows nothing about football, like nothing.
Whoa, Dianna, look at you.
And was like, hey, do you have any contacts for Kevin Stefanski? And I'm like, what? Why? And he's like, well, I don't really know that much, but I've read so much about his time in Cleveland and all the different situations he was faced with, like dealing with all sorts of issues. And when you go through it and you like take a second to think about, it's like, it is worth a movie. So I think for him, this makes a lot of sense in the world to just turn the page on that. But also, I don't think he could see anything in Atlanta that he hasn't seen before at this point. Like he'll be able to manage this really well.
Yeah, I'm excited. He keeps Jeff Ulbrich running that defense, which took a big turn. And I think that's a great move. And it's going to be interesting to see what that whole dynamic does. Listen, Philadelphia is taking over Atlanta. We're going down to the 30 South. There we got Matt Ryan. We got Kevin Stefanski. I might have a new team that I need to root for down there in Atlanta. I'm very excited.
Don't you love, I even tweeted Philly guys. And I'm like, I just love that. It's such an East Coast thing, and tell me if I'm wrong, but it's like the second somebody's from the same area, you immediately think they get along, because the truth is that that's kind of what happens. I have those relationships all the time with people where, like Anthony Campanelli is a great example. I couldn't point him out in a lineup. And one day he came up to me, he's like, "You're from Jersey?" I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "Oh, what's up?" That. Why is that connecting us? That's so stupid.
It's all that people care about. It works. Every time on the radio in Philadelphia, Upper Marion High School, James Palmer joins us.
It's familiarity. It's comfort, because you know what you're getting. We're all the same. We're the same.
Exactly.
We're basic
awesome.
Bitches.
Unreal. All right. Thank you. You got a lot to get to, because we still have openings. Diana's going to be all over it. Make sure you follow everything she's doing on social media, everything she's doing on The Athletic. It is really the can't miss kind of information that really nobody else provides. Friend, I will see you in a little bit.
We got it, baby. Thanks so much.
All right, covered a ton of Bills and Sean McDermott fallout with Dianna, but how about what's happening in Buffalo specifically moving forward, not just with the next head coach, but how about Brandon Beane, and how about Josh Allen? What's next on the roster? Joe Buscaglia joins us next with everything from Buffalo. All right, welcome back to Scoop City. I'm James Palmer, joined by a good buddy on the show. Got to see him in person this weekend, Joe Buscaglia. Both him and I were at that divisional game between the Broncos and the Bills, and it did not turn out great for the Bills. It felt different, we were just talking about, Joe, after the game, as opposed to, I just somehow realized this. I've been to every single one of these except one during the Josh Allen tenure of this season ending. You've been to all of them, I would assume. And it just real quick before we push forward, why did you get the sense that after that game and you lurking around the stadium, that this did feel a little different?
It's just in the way that, I don't remember if you were in the Bills locker room, but it was.
I did Josh, and then I did Broncos, and then I had to find out about Bo Nix, so then I stayed there, which was the most. This is an insane post game, by the way, and all.
Oh yeah, there was so much going on from both sides. It was wild, but the overall despair that I saw in that locker room is unlike anything I have ever witnessed. I've covered them this was my 16th full season, so I've gotten a good sense of who they are. And even after 13 seconds, even after losing the AFC Championship game the way that they did last year, were there some tears last year? Yes, there were, but there weren't from Josh Allen. Not like what I saw. He looked broken, like every sense of the word. And what we saw at the podium after the fact was unlike anything I've ever seen. But that was just the tip of the iceberg, because when he went back into the locker room, he was, usually most times when he goes through a gut punch of a loss, he'll go to his phone and he'll doom scroll. That's usually his coping mechanism. But in this one, it was just staring straight ahead, not talking to anyone for 10 minutes, occasionally picking at his fingers, occasionally grabbing his hair and looking down, like he was broken. And I think, that was part of it. And there were other teammates that were openly sobbing, like Dalton Kincaid was unable to be helped, for the lack of a better term. It was a crazy scene. And I think that's part of what makes this so different, because when you think about that and the opportunity that they had in a game they probably should have won on 6 different occasions. And, Josh Allen deserves some blame, too, because he turned the ball over a ton, and unnecessarily so. But the biggest sense of what I got was, how do you come back from that with doing the same thing that you just did last year? So that's why, at least to me, it felt like even if it wasn't a certainty, it at least opened the window a little bit more so than any of these other playoff losses that we've seen. And now we know exactly what that little creak of a window could provide, and that's a new head coach in Buffalo.
I just thought of this now, and I didn't remember having this conversation. But when I said I went to the Broncos locker room, I was talking to a couple of players that I know well, and they're always kind of curious. And one of them just goes, I think Sean's got to be gone, man. And I was like, no, are you serious? And he's like, they've been so close. And this is just another player, like on the other team, that was just kind of like, I don't know, man. It just seems like it's just, I get that feeling. Maybe he should be a GM or a journalist for that matter, and take our jobs. You mentioned Josh Allen so many times there, Joe. Like he is the key cog in what happens now moving forward. Do you think there's a couple of things at play here? I believe since they're behind the eight ball, Dianna mentioned it earlier, familiarity seems to probably something that they look into, because who is Josh familiar with? We have this window that you referenced and she referenced and I've referenced. But at the same time, do you go with somebody that's established because you need to be up and going right away? What are the traits you're looking for and what Buffalo needs to really, they need almost this to happen seamlessly and get right back going?
Yeah, this is without a question the most important move that they could possibly make in Buffalo sports history here, because it is a huge statement to move on.
That's a big one you just said.
I know, but
I think you're right.
It's a huge statement to move on from a head coach that just brought you out of a 17-year misery in his first season, getting them to the playoffs 8 out of 9 years, racking up over 100 wins, getting to the divisional round at least 6 straight seasons. Like, you can't do anything less here than hit a home run with whoever they hire. So what do they need to do now? I think if it were me, I am probably leaning to an offensive mind, because throughout all the time that the Bills have been here with Sean McDermott, there's always been that what if in the back of people's brains, like, okay, what if it was an offensive coach paired with Josh Allen? Because we saw how successful this whole thing went with Brian Daboll here as the offensive coordinator. And then Daboll was ripped out from underneath them because he, rightfully so, went on to get a head coaching job. Absolutely. Yeah. And that's what happens when you have really good coordinators. But when that doesn't happen? When the great offensive mind is also your head coach and there's no risk of leaving because he's just there. So it's always the wonder, the what if, like, okay, what if Josh had this great offensive mind that no matter what, he was going to be there throughout the rest of Josh Allen's career. And even if, they have a great defensive coordinator that gets scooped out from underneath them, they always can rest on the laurels of having that offensive mind without having to pick up the pieces the way that they did once Daboll left. And by the way, it did not go well when he left. They promoted Ken Dorsey from within. That was a failure. And ironically enough, after just writing a column on Josh Allen, some of the parallels here, ironically enough, Dorsey was canned after the Bills lost to the Broncos on a last-second Will Lutz field goal. So
was it the Russell Wilson game?
It was 2023. I think so. Yep.
When Russell Wilson went in there and beat them. Yep.
24-22 on Monday Night Football. Dorsey was canned the next day. Then they get to Joe Brady, who's been solid. I won't say spectacular, but solid. But it's nothing like Daboll, and I think people remember that. So that's the course that I think that they need to go here. Whether they do that or not remains to be seen. They could try to go for someone who brings a certain level of toughness. If there's someone that kind of melds both those principles, I think that could be something to keep an eye on. And in terms of established versus not established, it doesn't matter, honestly, at this point. Find the best coach and find the person who meshes with Josh Allen the best and who can maximize Josh Allen the best, because that's really what it's all about. And their window is not as big as it used to be. He's turning 30 in May, and that is something that needs to be and is on their minds throughout this decision. So it's on Brandon Beane, because he is now the one leading the search. He is now the one that the new head coach will directly report to, which is a switch from how it used to be. It used to be a horizontal reporting scheme to where they both reported directly to Terry Pegula. So now it's on Beane, it's on Terry Pegula. And if they don't get this right, then they could be looking at potentially going with one of the best quarterbacks in NFL history and never getting or winning a Super Bowl.
Don't say it. Don't make it happen. Don't put it out there, Joe. Buffalo fans don't want to hear that. Well, the other part of this, and you mentioned him there, Brandon Beane, in the press release of relieving Sean McDermott of his duties, he is also promoted to president of football operations, as well as general manager. I think you're absolutely correct as the factor that Josh Allen is in terms of your next head coach and how that relationship has to be and how they take another step forward. The other part of it falls on Brandon Beane in creating what is the best possible roster around Josh Allen. What needs to happen, do you think, or what could happen this offseason in terms of where they need to look to improve, some changes that could happen within this roster, and what you're looking for from Brandon Beane to do his part in this after they find the head coach?
Yeah, when he was promoted, I will say the reception from the fan base wasn't sterling. Because there was a lot of blame put on him for the groceries that he put on the table for the Bills, specifically at wide receiver. I think edge rusher is also a part of that has brought along a lot of, frustration from the fan base, because the two tenets are, hey, you need guys to get open to be able to maximize what Josh Allen can do, to where you're not having to rely on Brandon Cooks, who you brought in week 13 to come down with your make or break catch against the Broncos in the divisional round. And then two, to actually put pressure on the opposing quarterback with your front four, and because they didn't have that guy in that game. So I think those are the two areas that I think Beane really needs to stress on upcoming in this offseason. It's a gotta have it situation, but it is going to be tricky for him because they have a ton of free agents coming up, mostly on defense, but significantly they have two potential vacancies on their really good offensive line, and David Edwards and Connor McGovern both being up. And as of right now, according to Over the Cap, they are projected $11 million over the 2026 salary cap. Well, they could make one move to restructure Josh Allen's contract to get it all at least cap compliant. But the wiggle room that they had last offseason, that they spent all of these dollars, all of these cap percentages on retaining their own, a couple of those not really looking great right now. That's another part of this too. So yeah, Beane's got his work ahead of him, but the one absolute gotta have it in addition to the wide receiver and defensive end, you have to nail this head coaching hire. This will be his defining moment as Bills general manager. This will be the defining moment potentially in the Josh Allen era in Buffalo. And they have to nail it. Otherwise, I don't know what's going to happen here.
So much to keep an eye on. We'll keep having you on the show, Joe, because you bring the goods. And you know what? I thought this was a big deal before you came on. And now listening to you, I'm like, no, this is a really big deal. Like this is a really big deal. And so it's going to be fascinating as they're now an added piece to what we find is maybe the most interesting head coaching cycle in recent memory with everything that has transpired. So Joe, appreciate it. Get back to work. Enjoy the snow over the next 24 hours. I'm glad you made it back. Great to see you in person. And we'll be chatting soon, man.
Appreciate it, James. Thanks for having me.
No problem. All right, coming up, I'm going to talk about what moves forward with the Denver Broncos after that win over Joe's Bills and what happens with Jarrett Stidham. Little intel there that I've gathered over the last couple of days about Stiddy. Is he ready for this? We'll find out next on Scoop City. Welcome back to Scoop City on a Monday. James Palmer bringing it home solo. I sound like I'm on the radio. I want to break down what's happening in the AFC Championship game because, yes, it's another matchup of a Mike versus a Sean, but it also has a Jarrett in it, and that is Jarrett Stidham, who is going to be starting at quarterback for the Denver Broncos. I was in that building, was there for the news, in the room when Sean Payton delivered it that Bo Nix had fractured his ankle. He's going to have surgery on Tuesday, and that his postseason is over. So they now turn to Jarrett Stidham. Before we go forward, we got to go back. A couple of things you need to remember. With everything that I've gathered, it's this. Remember, when Sean Payton took the job 3 years ago in Denver, on his first day of free agency, he made a couple of moves. One, to bolster the offensive line with Mike McGlinchey and Ben Powers in free agency. He also made another move at the quarterback spot. He immediately came out of the gate and signed Jarrett Stidham to a 2-year, $10 million contract. Now, that always stood out to me because they had Russell Wilson at the time, but he valued Stidham and what he brought to the table. He actually valued Jarrett Stidham heavily when he was in New Orleans, when Stidham was coming out in the draft, and really did a lot of extensive work and liked Stidham's game. He also understands how he was coached by Josh McDaniels in both New England and in Vegas. And I will get to McDaniels in just a second. Now, what Stidham has brought to the table is the acumen of just knowing this system inside and out. The biggest thing I'm always told with Sean Payton is year 3. It's very valuable to Payton because after year 3, you usually have a very good grasp of his system and a lot of ownership of his system and how it operates. That's always been something Payton has told people around him, I'm told. Well, this is 3 years now for Jarrett Stidham in this system of Sean Payton. So he understands it inside and out. And I've been to a number of training camp practices over the last couple of years where at times he is the best quarterback on the field. Now, yes, he is a backup quarterback, and he's a backup quarterback for a reason. But there were a number of teams I talked to after he had an outstanding preseason. And Chase and I joked on this show a number of times he was maybe the best quarterback in football during the preseason. And yes, I know it was the preseason. But teams were interested. They were telling me, I wish he was in our building. There were teams that are kind of without a quarterback going, I wish we could give him a shot to be our starter. I talked to somebody in the league yesterday who told me if there was maybe 34 teams in the league, Jarrett Stidham would probably be a starting quarterback. So he's in that conversation as one of the best backups in football, but yes, again, a backup. I'm told that we are going to have a great plan for Jarrett. He is going to be very confident, and we have to run the football. An important part of that, of running the football, is the running back of J.K. Dobbins. J.K. Dobbins gets his practice window opened. We will see if he can go in this AFC Championship game and return, but he was a top 10 running back when healthy before he went down for the season with a foot injury. If J.K. Dobbins can go, dramatically changes things for Jarrett Stidham. But the X factor for this entire AFC game is offensive coordinator Josh McDaniels for the New England Patriots. I mentioned the time that he spent with Stidham. Don't even think for a second that he is not sitting up there in Foxborough with Mike Vrabel going, these are the things that the guy that I was with for a long time absolutely hates to go against defensively. These are the things that the guy I was with forever absolutely loves to go against defensively. These are the things he struggles with. These are his traits. I bet you that conversation is going on back and forth. So I would say that the X factor for this AFC Championship game, in my opinion, is Josh McDaniels, because he also has to scheme against Vance Joseph and this outstanding defense that would play a big role in helping Jarrett Stidham win this game and get the Denver Broncos to the Super Bowl. So keep your eye on how this entire week transpires. On Wednesday, we will have Chase Daniel on here, who knows Jarrett, who knows Sean Payton, knows this system, will tell us everything about a backup getting the proper preparation to start a football game, because guess what, guys? During the season, they get absolutely no run with the starters at all. All right, I want to thank Joe Buscaglia for joining us, giving us an in-depth look on what Buffalo does moving forward. Also, Dianna Russini just bringing the goods, as always, at the top of this one. Join us on Wednesday when, again, Chase joins us to break down the quarterback play of all of these teams, the Final Four, before we get to the Super Bowl. Take it easy.
Thanks for watching Scoop City. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and feel free to leave a comment. New episodes of Scoop City drop every Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday.